Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, and today is 11 October in 2021. Our special guest today is Doreen Cumberford, who is a serial expat, and we're going to learn about her expat experiences and about two and a half, 3 books that you've written, and all about the lifestyle of being an expat. But with that comes the self-responsibility of managing your head so that you don't get messed up on repatriations, and because it could be a mind-blowing experience if you're not prepared and if you don't use your experiences properly. Hello, Doreen, welcome.
Hello, Ed. Thank you for having me on your show.
You bet. This is a privilege for me to meet you because you are a wellspring of information for our general audience, which is full of expats worldwide. So let's talk about this very particular psychological issue of repatriation. You think you're going home and you're thinking about all these things you used to do, but it ain't necessarily so, is it?
It is not so at all. Now, it depends a lot on how long you have been gone, but we never go home because home has changed. And
you've changed.
You have changed,
yeah,
immensely, and home has changed. And both of those components are like, in intercultural terms, we talk about the iceberg a lot. And so there's much more under the surface that has to be managed, manipulated, and worked with than we are conscious of when we go home.
So let's talk about that for a sec. When you're away, when you're on assignment,
Yes.
doesn't matter where or for how long, you get into what's in front of you.
Yes.
And you keep thinking about how things were or what you used to do, that's for sure. But then you have this world right in front of you. And there's people who've been there, done that, and you're coming in. And so the burden is, well, the risk is you get depressed and you go within yourself, or you just stand up straight and put your best foot forward and stick out your hand and shake hands with people who you've never met before, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how have you conquered, looking back, before we go forward, let's look back. How have you conquered the fear of meeting new people, the fear of not fitting in or not knowing left foot from right foot in a new area?
Well, I had the great advantage of my first job out of university in Glasgow, and that was to be hired by Her Majesty's Diplomatic Service as a junior PA, personal assistant typist type. And I was immediately moved out of my little nest in Glasgow, Scotland, down to the big world of London. And I put my hand up and offered to go on the first assignment I was offered, which was called the armpit of the world, but actually it's a wonderful place. And that's Cameroon, Yaoundé, Cameroon in West Africa. I just threw myself into adventure. And I had to learn the hard way, all the mistakes I made, many of the mistakes in my 20s. So I had the benefit of some experience under my belt.
So at that time, were you married?
No, I was single.
So that could be a lot of fun, or it could be really lonely.
It was challenging. I was in my 20s and I was very ill prepared to navigate intercultural relationships.
Right.
And I got into trouble with the embassy and my boss, the ambassador, because I kind of fell in love with the Peace Corps volunteers who were working there. And I felt sorry for them because they were living in mud huts with the walls heaving, with cockroaches living under torn mosquito nets. And I had a beautiful apartment in the city, so I would frequently invite people in, and that was not appreciated at that point, And I was fascinated by the intercultural relationships because I'd never met very many Americans before that. I grew up in Scotland, and this was my first introduction to America, was dealing with the American expats and Peace Corps volunteers and the diplomats in Yaoundé.
Wow. Okay, so let's back up now and talk about your most recent corporate expat experience. Was that in Saudi Arabia?
That was working for Saudi Aramco, the big oil company. And I went as an accompanying spouse on that venture.
But you weren't working legally.
I was not working initially, and then I started to do a little bit of volunteer work, and then ultimately became a member of the staff at the school in Dhahran.
So in the school, that's in an American compound, like a gated community?
It is a huge gated community. It is more like a small gated city, but it is not American because Saudi Aramco has been Saudiized and owned by the Saudis since the 1980s, early 90s, before that. So it is somewhat Americanized in that it was originally developed like a base, but it has changed rapidly to an enormous city. And we had every nationality. We had about 45 nationalities and Saudis living on the compound. I had Saudi neighbors.
So the Saudi people, they need to, or they want to cover up. They want to not change their life, and yet they're right next door to you and to others who don't do that.
Some do, and some don't. We had neighbors who were Saudis, who were extremely traditional, and the man would look away if I was out on the street wearing my shorts. He never spoke to me, never had any interaction. However, we had many Saudi friends who were educated in the West, spoke fluent English, and had adopted the traditions of a more modern society. But from our perspective in the West, we look at it as if they're all similar, but everybody is on a gradient as far as their tradition and their religion.
A gradient means different levels.
Different levels, yes, and different people are playing all the time with their culture, their beliefs, and the way they live in the world.
It's like anybody else, right?
Yes, it is. They're just like us.
I know. Well, that's good to know. So I'm going to look at some notes here because there's a lot to learn from you. So your book, one of your books on the subject of repatriation and returning home was called Arriving Well. It was published in 2017 and with a subtitle of Life in the Camel Lane.
No,
So,
Life in the Camel Lane is my second book.
oh, second, I'm getting them confused.
No
So
worries.
take us back to the beginning. Which was your first book?
My first book was Arriving Well, and it's a collaboration where people, we interviewed and got stories from 5 well-known people in the global mobility industry who had returned home, and we talked to them and they told their story about repatriation.
Okay, so let's talk about repatriation before we get into book number 2, which is about life in the camel lane.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So repatriation, let's just enumerate do's and don'ts, okay? So before you depart the location, before you get on that plane back to Glasgow or America or wherever,
yes.
What should you not do?
You should not get buried in the logistics.
Oh.
You should spend time, well, not get buried in the logistics, not be in a whirlwind of hurry. You should not be creating the long, sad goodbye every single day. You should not be paying attention and all of your attention to your present location. There's 4. Do you need more?
Yeah, keep going. This is good.
Okay. You should not be spending all your time reminiscing about what you're going to miss. You should not be reaching out to your family and promising that you're going to be there for every event, anniversary, birthday, and Thanksgiving. You should not be, I'm used to more being asked, what should you do? You shouldn't be cavalier about the experiences you have had. And you should not be not journaling. You should not be ignoring the lessons that you have been delivered to you while you were there.
Okay, so now let's shift gears and be the proactive here.
Okay.
Would you, having to do it all over again,
Mm-hmm.
would you recommend people learn how to speak publicly and book themselves some speaking engagements?
If they want to be in the public arena and they want to maintain a public aura, and that's what we're talking about, yes. But beyond that, I would really recommend that people stay very present and start to create the vision for their retirement or their rewirement to the next project in the next place.
That's good thinking. Yes, I want you to be ready to go a little deeper in that. One of your points here is how to move from reminiscing to reinvention.
Yes.
And that's what I'm driving at with you here.
Yes. So,
okay.
So, we can get very, very stuck in, oh, it was so good. And we can come home and tell all these stories, which people are bored and don't want to listen to. Or we don't make the stories relevant to the people who are listening to them. And we don't make them relatable. And many of them are unrelatable, like, going into the Rubicali and crossing the desert by camel, or whatever you did while you were on your adventure is not relatable to people when we come home. So one of the things we need to think about before we come home is, how am I going to relate? How am I going to be the person who belongs to a society and can communicate and function? So yes, public speaking is one of the skills.
Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since March, April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows or to our radio broadcasts or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, that's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so, and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergei Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand What will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments?
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
So with the advent of Zoom and this medium, FaceTime even, using video to communicate or to show people what you do, where you live, how you do certain things before you return to quote unquote home, that can solve all these issues and worry about fitting in or boring people, yet while at the same time sharing some stuff.
Yes, I'm not sure that it entirely bridges the gap, though. I spent a lot of my time in Colorado when we moved to Colorado, speaking to the Lions, Tigers, and Bears clubs about how living in the life lessons learned living in the camel lane, and how we embraced adventure, and seeking to share that with people who had never been to the Middle East or never had no interest in the Middle East, but they are interested in having an adventure. So I think that you also have to make it, beyond being relatable, it also has to solve a problem. And what are the cultural problems we're having here that we can talk about the lessons that we've learned in the past and how other cultures handled it differently, perhaps.
That's a good one. So let's talk about juggling family and career expectations. Okay, you could probably do a deep dive on this one. So just touch on that a little bit.
Well, I think that
on assignment and then repatriation.
Okay. When you go on an assignment, you are primed for adventure. It's very exciting. Normally, it's usually something you've agreed to. It's an up-leveling of your career, perhaps in your skills. And if you are doing it well in a thoughtful manner, your entire family crew is behind you. Now, this is not always true, but when you return, you have a lot of other expectations. And some of these hidden expectations are where we get tripped up. The hidden expectations are things like, how do we communicate with our family when we get back? And how do we explain how we see things differently from them now? And how do we rebuild bridges of communication when whole cultures are being tortured?
So the digital world, okay, this is, 20 years ago, it wasn't like this. No. And even 5 years ago, people had cell phones, and but now it's like totally different from even 2-3 years ago. We've gotten used, because of the pandemic.
Yes.
People being in front of the screen more.
Yes.
It's much different than just picking up a telephone.
Yes.
And here I'm using the word telephone.
What is that?
I know, what is it? God, I feel a little So digital nomadism, I'm reading this here, digital nomadism, the trends, the possibilities, corporate response in the future. What are you getting at there?
Well, I would consider myself a digital nomad now, but I would also consider myself a recovering expatriate. Because I do believe that that repatriation journey is a sort of recovery journey.
Okay, let's talk about what, 12 steps or what?
I think that some of the 12-step programs are slightly applicable in the way of thinking, but not necessarily all of them. But I do think it takes time. It takes a lot of focus and attention and changing your brain in order to accommodate the new culture that you land in.
So how do you change your brain? You can't do it overnight. So what's one step?
One step you can do is to recreate the vision of what you would love. You know, what's in front of you, where are you, and exactly what is it that you want to achieve, but programming yourself with that vision. A lot of us have goals and dreams and ideas, but we don't do a lot to actually program ourselves to be the person that is living that life. And so being the person in the experience is so different from making up a story or just, you know, just kind of creating a vision or writing a little goal down on a piece of paper. You actually have to learn to live it and spend time with it every day.
Give me an example, specific.
Specific example of creating a vision. I had a client who was moving home, and they didn't really know where they wanted to live, which is very common. Very common.
Meaning they've changed. They don't want to go back to where they were. They want to try something else.
They want to try a different geographical experiment, but in their home country. Yeah. Sitting down and actually having them think about, you know, what is the physical reality that you prefer in terms of geography, in terms of weather, in terms of physical situations, because that's one of the things that we're bridging that we don't think about is, you know, my eyes were homesick for Saudi Arabia because I could not see calligraphy. My ears were homesick for Saudi Arabia because I couldn't listen to Arabic easily. And we don't take the physicality in, and that's part of our programming. It's day by day by day. That is being installed into our brain. And so actually imagining ourselves and putting ourselves in that situation every day, thinking about, is this really what I want? And going on a very deep dive and a long journey with these ideas that occur to us, I think makes a huge difference to preparing us for all of the change that we are naturally unprepared to manage.
So I can imagine some people are feeling at this point overwhelmed.
Yes.
And sort of a sense of grief or loss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tears.
So how do you, do you open a bottle of wine or just, you know, commiserate with someone else or
all of it?
It all happens. Yeah.
It's like, what is your natural, how do you want to grieve? How would you grieve losing a beloved person in your life? How would you grieve anything that you have loved and lost? That's how you have to grieve your expatriate experience. It's hopefully it's somewhere you loved and you enjoyed, and it's like releasing that love and that energy in order to create space to fall in love with the next place. And unless you grieve it well, the next place is just going to be another place to complain about.
So does that lead into why some people, probably a lot of people, don't want to go back to what they had? They want to go back to home country, but instead of living in Denver, they want to live in Washington. all
Yes.
right, or they want to go to Aruba or someplace.
And I encourage people to experiment. I mean, currently I'm a digital nomad right now because we're still experimenting on where is the real place that we want to spend the rest of our lives. And so it's, I think that they're building yourself some bridges between where you were and where you want to be. And it's okay if you're not absolutely 100% clear on where you want to be. It's absolutely okay to live in the experiment.
This is really helpful. So your point number 5 about how transformation is wrapped up in global mobility is not merely a geographical shift. That's what you're talking about. It's a whole body experience, right?
It is, yes. It is a whole body experience, and we forget that because we've been programmed to get ourselves on a plane and we can travel 14 hours and I can be in or maybe more like 22 hours, and I can be in Saudi Arabia. And yet the thinking back then was 600 years behind the place I just left 22 hours ago. And so how do you navigate changing your thinking that quickly? Now, it's mostly practice, doing it a lot over a long period of time, and understanding the hidden expectations, all of that. And that works in reverse when we rewind our lives, because when you become a repatriated person, you're rewinding your life to come back to a place that is somewhat familiar, but isn't necessarily home.
Let's talk about the new book coming out, Jiggity Jag. What's that about? It sounds like a dance.
Well, home again, jiggity jig is the beginning of a nursery rhyme. It's an ancient British nursery rhyme when, you go to market to get a fat pig. And that's what most expatriates do, is we're going to market to get a fat pig. We're going out in the world to create a greater sense of abundance and hopefully success, and then come home. And so it's about how do we do that with joy, and how do we do it fluently and authentically, and how do we deal with the navigating the grief and the sucky parts that come with it. And that's all hidden. People when we come back, they say, oh, look, you made some money, you got, you maybe got the nice house, perhaps you look like you have the American dream, but inside it's not an American dream that's installed in you anymore.
It's world.
Yeah, it's global.
Well, we're almost out of time. We have about 5 minutes left, and boy, it went by fast. You'd think of 30 minutes as saying, well, it could be interminable, but boy, this is like a flash. So that's because of the information exchange and the ease of communicating this way when it's done right. So thank you. So yeah, so I want you to come back on the show next month, the month after, and let's talk about, let's spend a couple of minutes now talking about what you're doing. House sitting pets.
Yes.
That sounds like fun.
It is so much fun. We repatriated back to America in 2010, and my husband immediately went into a consulting situation for Saudi Aramco. So we were effectively employees, and then we were consultants. And after a few years, we felt relatively settled in America, but we weren't sure that we really wanted to be here forever. Of course, we have witnessed in the last 11 years immense cultural change in this society. So we thought, well, what else could we do? And we had a dog, and I found trustedhousesitters.com online, which is a platform which is like a dating site. It matches hosts and homeowners with people who would love to come and live in a beautiful property, not always beautiful, but mostly beautiful, and you can choose and take care of their pets. So we've been doing this off and on since 2016, and we've actually been on the road full time for the last 3 years.
Way to go. God, that's great. So trustedhousesitters.com.
Yes.
And that's, so it's almost like, but it's not a home exchange. You just,
No, this
it's a
is not
one-off. Yeah.
Yes, yes. We had people come to our home and take care of our dog, live in our house, drive our car, and enjoy the lifestyle that we had in Denver. And one day I looked at my husband and I said, really? Don't you think we could be doing this? And my dad was still alive and in Scotland. So our first house sit was a freezing cold February, 3 weeks in a brand new property way out in the country, in the borders in Scotland, with $2 million horses. They were Olympic equestrian horses walking down the lane past us every day. And we took care of 2 dogs for 3 weeks. We had so much fun. I got to visit my family, and it was just really a heartwarming experience. And from there, we became part of the trust economy. And that's when we started our digital nomadism life.
Trust economy, what's that mean?
The trust economy, I think, there's a lot of trust based into it, because the trust economy is the invisible economy. You know, money has trust, you know, in God we trust, I think is on the dollar bill. And, you know, there's an exchange. So this is an exchange where no money changes hands. The homeowner trusts that we are responsible, respectable, and will care for their property and live in it lightly. And we in turn trust that they will match their agreement.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that information, Doreen. Nice to meet you. And let's not say goodbye, but we'll see you soon again on Global TV.
Thank you very much, Global TV.
Thank you for being on our show. I really have learned a lot from you, and I'm going to look into that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.